Hello and welcome back to this Library of Ruina series. In this video, we'll be taking on Pluto. I'll give a really quick TLDR for the cheese strategy before going a bit more in depth. We're going to be bringing the purple tier with 3 Ominous Power, 3 Beyond, and 3 Serpentine Barrier. The other 4 librarians will be default pages with copies of Guardian, Opportunity Spotted, and Comment Preparation, but if you don't have enough copies, then just put anything that clashes poorly on them. For passives, your purple tier will bring double defensive power, Firm as a Great Mountain, and Keep You in Stride. The other librarians will put on speed and nothing else. For your contracts, put the haste one on your purple tier and redirect the other ones away. Take Lean Bloody Wings, then Attention and Focus, then Confession, then Advent, and your tier 3 page doesn't matter at all. Prioritize Serpentine Barrier over Beyond unless you have fewer than 3 pages in hand, and use your contractual obligation every scene you have dice available for it. Send all of your purple tier's dice towards Pluto and you should win almost every time. Now for the in-depth portion. Pluto has 200 HP, 450 stagger, is immune to all damage, and has 4 passives. Shimmering, Nuovo Fabric, Magical Barrier, which makes him immune to status ailments and takes no stagger damage from Deflects, and Yesterday's Promise, which spawns 4 shades that copy the assistant librarians on the second scene, and once all of them have been killed, move on to the next phase. On the first scene, he'll be casting a set of 5 pages. Contract of Liberty randomizes the costs of the librarian's pages and makes it so if they use a page that has a certain light cost, they'll lose 25% of their max HP at the start of the next scene. Contract of Amplification makes it so that when the librarian plays a page with a certain light cost, the dice gain 3 power and otherwise they'll lose 3 power. Contract of Swiftness makes it so that the librarian permanently gets 3 haste, but for each one-sided attack they do, they'll get 1 feeble and disarm next scene. Contract of Might gives the librarian 2 strength every scene, but if they use a page that has 2 or more defensive dice, not including counter dice, they'll get staggered next scene. Finally, Contract of Light refills the librarian's light at the start of each scene, but at the end of each scene, they'll take 10% of their max HP for every light they have. After that first scene, Pluto will spawn 4 shades and use a new set of pages, but before I go over them, I'm going to talk about the shades. Their stats are equivalent to the stats of your assistant librarians, so 30 HP, 15 stagger, Pierce Weak and Blunt Fatal, and they'll also inherit any non-speed passives you put on them, as well as having 3 additional passives: Shimmering, Shade, which gives them HP, stagger, resistances, and passives of the assistants, and also makes them use the assistants' pages occasionally, and I'm the Real One, which makes them use a powerful combat page every couple of scenes. Their deck consists of 5 cards. Their first one is Shaded Strike, which rolls 4-8, 4-8, 3-7 Blunt. This page should get tanked by one of your assistants or mitigated with any counter die. The shades also have 3 versions of Shadow Image. The first one rolls 6-6 Blunt that on Clash Lose makes them use the page that they lost to next scene, as well as having a 4-9 evade counter die. This page should be redirected to one of your fodder librarians or mitigated with your contractual obligation to avoid having it eat a counter die. The next Shadow Image rolls 3-10 evade, 1-2 Blunt that has the same Clash Lose text. This page loses pretty handily to your contractual obligation, so you should never have an issue with it. The last Shadow Image rolls 3-10 evade, 6-8, 4-4 Blunt, with the last Blunt having the Clash Lose text. This page should be mitigated with a counter die or redirected to your fodder librarians. Finally, I'm the Real One rolls 9-9, 9-9, 9-9 Blunt. This page can be annoying by eating up a ton of counter dice if you get unlucky, but if you stacked endurance beforehand it should be fine, otherwise redirect it to a fodder librarian. Now we can move on to Pluto's deck. He has 3 melee pages and 1 ranged page in his first phase. Magic Missile is his ranged page and rolls 5-8, 5-8, 5-8 Pierce and has a 3-6 block counter die. Since ranged pages don't get deflected by block dice, you should use a Beyond to clash into this as often as possible to avoid having it eat your counter dice for no value. Magic Deflection rolls 7-10 block, 3-8, 3-7 Pierce. Since this page has 3 dice, you should just let your Serpentine Barrier or Beyond counter dice clash into this page. Magic Onslaught rolls 6-10, 6-10 Blunt and has a 3-7 block counter die. Beyond will work best, but don't sweat too much as your Serpentine Barrier counter dice still roll higher. Finally, Magic Safeguard rolls 3-8, 3-7 block, 3-7 Pierce. This is his lowest rolling page and should just be clashed into with your counter dice. Generally, you're going to want to have your purple tier clash into Pluto as often as possible once you get Lean Bloody Wings to drain its HP through resistances and passives. Use Ominous Power whenever you need to get extra light, but if you're using more than one, then you'll usually need to use at least 2 Beyonds to refill your hand to get copies of Ominous Power back. Beyond that, if you have Guardian or Combat prep on your fodder librarians, use them as often as possible since they usually die in 1 or 2 scenes and you need to get positive emotion coins for Lean Bloody Wings. Once you've beaten Pluto, you'll get his key page and a new combat page. Pluto has 103 HP, 51 stagger, is blunt damage and pure stagger injured, and has 3 passives: Speed 3, Nuovo Fabric, and Contracts. This passive gives unsigned contracts to all of your librarians' hands that can be exchanged with each other, and upon fulfilling the condition, gives one of the contract gimmicks that you had in the fight. Amplification requires having a 1, 2, and 3 cost in hand at the end of a scene. Liberty requires the librarian to use a page with a modified cost. Light requires the librarian to be at emotion level 2 at the end of a scene. Might requires the librarian to have strength at the end of a scene. And Swiftness requires the librarian to win 4 clashes using defensive dice. Overall, this passive is really hit or miss. If you enjoyed some or all of the contracts in the fight, then you'll probably really like this page, and otherwise you'll probably hate it. The comment page you get, Suspicious Contract, is pretty interesting as well. It's a 1 cost rolling 3-5, 3-4, 2-4 block, and it restores 1 light upon discarding it. This page has a few different use cases. Obviously, you could put it in a discard deck as the light regen, as it's probably better than insurance coverage as you can actually clash with it reasonably in a pinch. The other way is as a cheap way to get 3 defensive dice in an endurance stacking build. Once you get to double digit levels of endurance, it doesn't really matter whether the roll range was 3-5 or 6-9, but having 2 extra light can let you cast extra pages to keep the endurance level high, or just get more defensive dice overall. Other than those 2 niche cases, however, it seems pretty bad. For deck building with Pluto, they don't really have much direction other than the contracts, so I'll just give general advice on how to easily achieve each of the contracts. Amplification and Light both just require you to play the game. Basically every deck will have all of the light costs on hand and will achieve it by the 3rd scene, and Light is pretty self-explanatory, just clash a couple of times and you get to emotion level 2. Might works well with passives that give strength such as Solidarity, Offensive Position, 4 Triarms, or Blood Fiendish. Alternatively, you could also use Augury Kick or Nikolai's Battle Command to similar effect. Liberty is easiest achieved with Gloria's Easygoing Breather. I'd advise against using Clone Rapid Gashes with it though, because it doesn't synergize well with the contract effect. Finally, Swiftness requires you to clash a bit more proactively with your defensive dice for a few scenes. Most of your pages have incidental defensive dice, so you aren't lacking in that, but instead of just using them to mitigate damage, you should clash into utility pages with Will of the Prescript or Emotional Turbulence to get near guaranteed clash wins. In the next video, we'll be finishing the Ensemble Gauntlet with Argalia. I'll see you soon, and as always, thank you for watching.